In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, March 9th. U.S. intelligence authorities say North Korea's Kim Jong-un remains steadfast in his nuclear weapons ambitions, raising regional security risks for the U.S. and its allies. Meanwhile, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell takes a softer stance, stressing that the size of the rate hike for March has yet to be decided and will depend on data for this month. And on the local political front, Kim Gi-hyeon emerges victorious in the People Power Party's leadership vote and looks to lead the party during next April's legislative election. Pyongyang has no plan to surrender its nuclear weapons ambitions and remains determined to expand its arsenal. Now, this is according to the latest annual assessment by the U.S. intelligence community. Our defense correspondent Kim Hyun-sung explains.
North Korea has no intention of giving up its weapons program. This from the annual threat assessment from the U.S. Director of National Intelligence released on Wednesday, Washington local time. The report says that the regime's leader Kim Jong-un believes nuclear weapons and ICBMs are needed to guarantee his rule and could help make his footing as a nuclear power. He also hopes to shift the regional security situation in his favor while counteracting South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's hardline stance against the North. This comes as a major threat to the U.S. and its allies. Pyongyang's cyber threats also loom large. Last year, Pyongyang's cyber forces stole $625 million from a Singapore-based tech firm. The U.S. believes North Korea could disrupt some U.S. infrastructure and businesses, albeit in a small or limited way. To deter future cyber threats from Pyongyang, South Korea's foreign ministry said on Wednesday that it is working closely with the U.S. to investigate cyber crimes. However, according to the threat assessment, the biggest threat to the U.S. is China.
People's Republic of China, which is increasingly challenging the United States economically, technologically, politically, and militarily around the world, remains our unparalleled priority.
Speaking at the Senate Intelligence Committee on Wednesday, Washington time, the National Intelligence Director also called out the Chinese Communist Party to be, quote, the most consequential threat, especially as it is deepening its ties with Russia. The DNI report called China a near-peer competitor and revealed that China is building hundreds of new ICBM silos. China's threat could further grow as the country exerts power over Taiwan, a key semiconductor producer. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, just a day after sending markets into jitters with talk about higher and quicker interest rate hikes, U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell on Wednesday added that no final decision had been made and that the rate hike this month would depend on relevant data. Our Ising-jae covers his latest remarks and more.
Speaking to a House panel on economy and monetary policy on Wednesday, U.S. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said officials have not yet made a decision on the size of the next rate hike. He noted that the decision will be made after looking at additional economic data during the Federal Open Market Committee meeting, which takes place March 21st to 22nd. His latest comments come after he hinted the previous day that with the latest U.S. economic data being stronger than expected, policymakers may have to be more aggressive with the rate hikes. Economists interpreted his Tuesday comments as indication that a 50 basis point increase could be imposed instead of a smaller step of 25 basis points seen at the previous FOMC meeting. Meanwhile, IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva said Wednesday that the U.S. and European economies are showing signs of recovery, but stressed that it's too early to ease interest rate hikes amid concerns over a resurgence in inflation. Speaking to CNN, the IMF chief cited strong job markets in the U.S. and Europe, as well as swiftly reducing their dependence on Russian energy. She also called on the U.S. Fed chair to stay the course on the U.S. central bank's pace of rate hikes, while also calling on other central banks to continue their push to bring inflation down from the highest levels in decades. Despite a global slowdown due to the rising interest rates, Georgieva said she does not forecast a global recession for this year. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
Here on the local front, Kim Gi-hyeon has been chosen to head the ruling People Power Party, and his official agenda on this Thursday began with a visit to the National Cemetery to honor the country's patriots. Our senior National Assembly correspondent Han Sung-woo reports.
The People Power Party's leadership race has finally come to an end. On Wednesday, at the ruling party's national convention in Goyang City, National Assembly member Gi-hyeon was announced the winner, claiming a majority of some 460,000 votes registered party members cast either through their mobile devices or automated phone calls over a 4-day period that ended on Tuesday. The 55.1% turnout rate was a record high for the party. The former mayor of Ulsan City, who had widely been considered the frontrunner, won 52.93%, a majority of the ballots, eliminating the scenario of a runoff vote that would have taken place on Friday and Saturday.
Let's unite as one and sweep next year's general elections. The authority held by a party chairman is not a right, but rather a duty and responsibility.
In the end, runner-up An Cheol-soo finished the race with 23.37% of the votes, failing to challenge Kim in a one-on-one debate, which was scheduled to take place on Thursday, had no candidate won a majority. Meanwhile, the other two candidates, Chon Ha-ram, head of a regional chapter of the party in Jeollanam-do province, and former Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won, each took 14.98 and 8.72% of the votes. 4 new members of the party's Supreme Council and 1 new young member of the council, a position designated for those under 45, were elected on Wednesday as well. Before the results were revealed, President Yoon Suk-yeol stopped by to encourage the ruling party and urge its members to come together to build a new nation for the Korean people.
우리 국민의힘 당내 선거에서는 승자도 패자도 없습니다. 우리 당 구성원 모두 첫째도 국민, 둘째도 국민, 셋째도 국민만을 생각하고 함께 전진해야 합니다.
Kim will be expected to guide his party to victory in next year's general elections, where it's aiming to secure a majority in parliament and thus help move President Yoon Suk-yeol's agenda forward. The National Assembly is currently controlled by the Democratic Party of Korea, which has been using its majority power to force through bills and motions with the 169 out of 299 seats it holds. Kim, who's being branded a Yoon loyalist, was widely considered to be President Yoon's favorite among the candidates for party chairman. So it's safe to say that Wednesday's result was the ideal outcome for the nation's top office. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Over at the Tokyo Dome, Team Korea is playing its first match of the 2023 World Baseball Classic against Australia as we speak. Now, as of 1:50 p.m. on this Thursday, Korea leads Australia 3-2 at the top of the 6th inning. With the top 2 from each of the 4 pools of 5 teams heading to the quarterfinals, a win against Australia will boost Korea's chances of advancing. The 2 teams also faced off against each other at the WBC in 2013 when Korea defeated Australia 6-0. A loss against Australia today, however, would mean a must-win scenario for Team Korea against Japan this coming Friday at 7 p.m. local time. Over in the U.S., Trade Minister An Duk-keun is poised to address Seoul's concerns about Washington's CHIPS Act with relevant U.S. officials. Arriving in Washington for a 3-day visit on Wednesday, An told reporters unilateral calls for excessive business information or severe restrictions on operations in China under the act could cause, quote, serious problems given the industry's volatile characteristics. The act offers subsidies to chip makers for building facilities in the U.S., but it bars them from making new investments or advanced chips in China, while demanding disclosure of information on surplus gains. For the 5th month in a row, foreign investors have maintained their buying trend here in the Korean stock market. According to the Financial Supervision Service on Thursday, offshore investors net purchased some $887 million worth of listed stocks as of the end of last month. The sum proves that overseas investors have continued to buy more local shares than they sold. But net purchases fell sharply in February compared to the 9-year high recorded in January. Foreigners' combined stock assets now stand at around $482.4 billion, accounting for almost 27% of the market cap. By country, investors from the UK were the biggest buyers. Meanwhile, a trade show is underway here in capital Seoul aimed at providing factories with smart solutions to facilitate their functions. Our trade correspondent Gi-hyeon was there.
The Smart Factory has become crucial as it can give small and medium-sized manufacturers a competitive edge. At the Smart Factory and Automation World 2023 trade show in Seoul, LG CNS and IT Solutions unit of LG Group showcased its smart logistics with various functions from storing products to sorting.
AutoStore uses robots to manage the storage instead of requiring humans to go to the storage location. When needed, the robot picks the item and delivers it to the person. Also, the task of classifying products is done by sorting robots.
It also introduced its robot rental subscription service, which means companies wouldn't need to commit to purchasing one without knowing if they are worth the investment. Another South Korean IT firm, CJ Olive Networks, showcased its smart factory service called Factory One. AI-based technology raises the accuracy of its X-ray machine when detecting foreign substances in food products. Global automation company Siemens introduced its digital twin solution that provides testing and simulations of products by utilizing both real and virtual space. During the event's opening ceremony, South Korea's first vice industry minister emphasized the need to accelerate the use of AI technology.
We are pushing ahead with automation and digitization through various policies to address the issue of labor shortages and improving productivity that companies are facing and to prevent safety accidents.
Back in January, the industry ministry announced its so-called industrial AI internalization strategy to boost the use of AI technology among companies. Its goal is to increase AI use from 1% to 30% and nurture over 100 AI suppliers to become globally competitive by 2030. This strategy includes commercializing AI solutions and accelerating the development of AI-related technologies. Meanwhile, the event has a session where the ministry elaborates on the strategy and introduces R&D projects to participating companies. Under the theme of We Connect Your Factory, the 3-day event will run through Friday with 500 companies showcasing their latest technologies like smart factory, smart logistics, and robotics. Gi-hyeon, Arirang News.
A massive wildfire that broke out in the country's southeastern county of Hapcheon has been brought under control. According to authorities, the fire has been contained as of 10 a.m. on this Thursday with no casualties. The area affected by the blaze reportedly equals some 230 soccer fields. It began on a hill in Hapcheon, Gyeongsang-Namdo province at around 2 p.m. on Wednesday, forcing over 200 people to evacuate. Authorities in response had raised the wildfire warning to level 3 in its 4-tier system, a first for the year. U.S. health authorities have decided to lift their COVID-19 testing for travelers from China. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shared this decision on Wednesday, but has yet to announce a date for the lifting. The testing requirement was put in place on January 5th amid China's sudden departure from its zero-COVID policy. Separately, Korea and neighboring Japan lifted their testing requirements for China from March 1st. Also on smart solutions, Korean technology related to the farming of fruits and vegetables regardless of climate conditions has secured a substantial order from the Middle East. Our Eun-jin has details.
This vegetable smart farm used to be an area of abandoned underground shops. Domestic efforts in advancing smart farming technology now allow optimization of light, heat, humidity, and nutrition for the vegetables, even underground. And the cultivation period can also be reduced by half or even up to a third of the time it would normally take.
We've developed low-heat and high-efficiency LEDs that specifically allow plants to grow in optimal conditions.
The types of plants grown have diversified from leafy vegetables to strawberries, with plans to expand to flowers in the future, which would add value to the technology. The plants can be preserved for longer, and the size to which they grow to can also be controlled. This means these plants can be grown in conditions regardless of region or season, which has attracted Middle Eastern countries that have a dry, subtropical climate. A Korean company has formed a joint venture with a company in Kuwait with plans to export $27 million worth of smart farming plants to 6 different countries in the Middle East. And the South Korean government is in full support of this project as a means to revitalize exports to this region after the recent global economic crisis.
We have strong marketability and potential for economic and trade cooperation in the Middle Eastern market, where demand and purchasing power remain big.
South Korean export items to this region have been concentrated in automobiles, semiconductors, and batteries made by large companies. But now, growing domestic support for small and medium-sized companies will also contribute to diversifying exports and increasing competitiveness. 이은진, Arirang News.
In other news, despite the remarkable strides by Korea over the years with regard to wages and work opportunities for women, the country remains home to one of the thickest glass ceilings in the world. Our Shin Se-byuk takes a look.
In 1977, the UN General Assembly declared March 8th as International Women's Day in support of women's rights and global peace. Almost half a century later, women are making significant contributions to both political and business circles worldwide. Progress has been made in South Korea too, but there's still a long way to go. Every year, the British magazine The Economist releases the Glass Ceiling Index that measures the role and influence of women in the workforce. South Korea has consistently ranked dead last among 29 OECD member countries since it was first released in 2013. A sociology professor points out that such a grim reality comes from the lack of good job opportunities given to Korean women.
When we say the glass ceiling, it refers to barriers women are facing at the senior level. But here in South Korea, women don't get to that point because they are frequently placed in job positions with limited or no chance for advancement.
She also says the old stereotype against women as caretakers at home leads to a vicious cycle that restricts women from pursuing leadership roles.
Women are still seen as responsible for housework, putting a lot of expectation on them to do that. On top of that, employers tend to avoid hiring or promoting women, which means they end up stuck in low-level, unstable jobs.
While the expert calls for active government intervention, she adds that too many women-friendly, more specifically married women-friendly workplace policies, such as extending maternity leave, could become a constraint in the long term. And such criticism was also echoed by a legal expert.
When companies or governments announce gender equality policies, unmarried women or male employees tend to only focus on the benefits that they are not eligible for, and this could cause backlash for married women.
The lawyer also suggests that when it comes to legal efforts for gender equality at workplaces, incentivizing change may be more effective than imposing penalties. As a fundamental solution to breaking the glass ceiling, both experts say continuous education aimed at raising awareness for women's empowerment can bring about real change. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Georgia, tens of thousands of people took to the streets in the nation's capital of Tbilisi to protest the passing of the so-called Foreign Agents Law. Wednesday marked the second day of the protest against the proposed measure. If passed, it would classify all media and non-governmental organizations as foreign agents if they receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad. The protests come after lawmakers passed the new law through its early stages on Tuesday. The proposed law has been met with international criticism and has sparked local concern that it could affect Georgia's chances of becoming an EU member. The country's opposition party described the bill as a Russian-style law, closely resembling a similar measure used by Moscow to limit press freedom. Meanwhile, in a world first, Denmark has launched a carbon capture project that's aimed at storing CO2 under the sea. Called the Green Sand Project, it was officially launched on Tuesday at an opening ceremony in the town of Esbjerg. The project will use a depleted oil field located 1,800 meters beneath the Danish part of the North Sea. The oil field will store imported liquefied CO2 captured in Belgium. By 2030, it's expected to store 8 million tons of CO2 per year. According to the United Nations and the International Energy Agency, such capture and storage projects are vital in meeting climate goals. Staying in Europe, EU scientists say that the continent experienced its second warmest winter on record. This is according to a report released by the Copernicus Climate Change Service on Wednesday. In it, experts said that Europe's average temperature from December 2022 to February this year was 1.4 degrees Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 average for the same period. It was only beaten by the winter of 2019 to 2020, where temperatures exceeded 3.4 degrees for the 1981 to 2010 average. The record high temperatures this winter saw a number of ski resorts forced to close due to a lack of snow. Scientists say the increasingly warm winters are a result of global temperature rises due to human-caused climate change. And finally, the children of Prince Harry and wife Meghan Markle will use royal titles. This means they will be called Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The use of the titles was confirmed by a family spokesperson who announced the christening of Princess Lilibet in Los Angeles last week. The children were not given the titles when they were born, as at the time they were not the grandchildren of Queen Elizabeth II. That changed when Charles III ascended to the throne. The news comes amid growing interest in the family, with Prince Harry and King Charles III's relationship under the spotlight after the prince released a memoir this year that leveled a number of accusations against the royal family. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We had an exceptionally warm and wet start to the day, but after the rain lets up, the clouds are giving way to much brighter skies. A light jacket was enough for the morning commute. Afternoon highs in the capital area are slightly lower than Wednesday this afternoon. The warming trend should hit its peak tomorrow, topping out at 22 degrees in Seoul and 26 degrees Celsius over in Gwangju, almost feeling like early summer in southern provinces. That much-needed nationwide rain on Sunday will bring temperatures back to norms next week, so there will be a dramatic drop in readings. Dry air stays for the east of Gangwon-do and in Gyeongsang-do provinces, with dry alerts being in place for more than 2 weeks there. And along with strong wind, fire safety should come first. Afternoon highs in the south are above 20 degrees Celsius this afternoon, but the dust level to rise in the afternoon in most parts of the country. Temperature gaps for next 2 days will be quite wide, so please dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends Thursday's afternoon newscast. As always, we have our panel session coming up right after this break. See you in a bit.